friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all doing really well. So I am, like I said previously on the channel, I'm a little bit behind on recording videos. So I'm going to be batch recording a little bit and hopefully I can catch up with everything that I want to talk about. But for today's video, we're into November now, and if you've watched my recent videos for spooky season, you'll know that I read a lot of witch books for spooky season this year. And so it got me thinking about really great witch books that I've read over the years. So I wanted to do a witchy book recommendation video of just some of the ones that I truly love. Now I went back through my Goodreads and I looked at books that I've read, witchy books that I've read over the past few years, and there are so many because of course it's one of my favorite subgenres of horror. So I went through and I picked out several from kind of adult, middle grade, children's, and nonfiction that I wanted to share with you if you're looking for some great witchy reads. So starting off with the nonfiction books, I actually got this book when I was super young. When did this come out? 93-ish, I think. 95. So I would have been 13 when I got this, and when I was a teenager I had learned a lot about the witch trials and everything, and I remember getting this book at a place called Kohl's here in Canada. I don't even think they exist anymore. I think we just have Indigo here now, but it's kind of like a Barnes & Noble type store. And so it's Witchcraft, The History and Mythology by Richard Marshall, and I love this book so much. This is the original copy that I had since I was 13. I've managed to keep it along my travels throughout life. And this one goes over a lot of specifically the Salem witch trials and you know, the American New England. It does get into a lot of the history of paganism and Egypt and stuff like that as well, and how everything sort of ties together. But this chapter here is called Spectres at Salem, and you can see the beautiful illustrations. So it's all illustrated throughout. The paper has actually lost a little bit of its sheen because of how many times I've read it, but this is a fantastic book on kind of witchcraft throughout history, and how it directly affected the Salem witch trials. So like I said, I learned about it when I was a teenager. This was one of the books that I had since then, and I absolutely love it. So I highly recommend that one. And this one is another one that I love as well. So I believe I spoke about this one in my my spooky season video. I didn't get to reading it. I do want to pick it up eventually though. It is a little bit chunky and it can be kind of dry because it is a history book. It's nonfiction, but it's one of the better ones. And this is by Ronald Hutton, Witches, Druids, and King Arthur. So this one was more of an introduction into like the UK witchcraft and witch trials. And I paid $44.95 for this book when it came out. That's a ridiculous price. Oh my goodness. I don't think this one is in print anymore. You might have to get it from a library. I don't know if you can find it in digital copy either. But if you can find it, this is a fantastic history book as well. And Ronald Hutton has a lot of books on druidry and witchcraft and everything in the UK area of the world. So if you can't find this one specifically, I recommend any of his books. And the third nonfiction one I wanted to talk about is one that I read earlier this year. I believe it came out this year as well. It's called Contagious Enemies, First-Hand Accounts from the Aberdeen Witch Trials by D. Lawler. And from what my viewers have told me, this book is actually a little bit obscure to find. So I did get it in digital copy through Amazon. So I'm hoping it's still available. And this one goes more deeply into Scottish witch trials specifically, which are just, the whole history is horrific. And it talks a lot about King James and his whole paranoia about witches and everything. So I highly recommend that one, not only because of the information in it, but the way the author presents the information. It's very easily digestible, unlike something like this, which is a little more dry. I did find that one a little bit of an easier read. So getting into some middle grade books, I just looked through my list. I actually don't have any children's ones in here, but if you go back through some of my videos, you'll see some children's witchy books in there also. My video from spooky season does have a couple in there. But this one specifically is middle grade, and it's not just a book, it's an entire series. So this is the Last Apprentice series by Joseph Delaney, and I've talked about it 100 times on this channel, but I wanted to mention it again because I think it's a really underrated children's series. Matthew and I are rereading them right now on audiobook, and he's really enjoying it, and he's not a reader whatsoever. So it's about this young boy, Thomas Ward, and he is an apprentice to a local spook who, in the county that they live in, he rids properties of ghosts, ghouls, ghasts, and witches. And witches play probably the most prominent type of like supernatural creature in this series. So I really wanted to recommend this one, because even though it has other things like other supernatural beings, witches really do play kind of a central role, and the way they're described is really great. The way they're worked into the stories is really great. But if you know anything about UK folklore, and of course the history of the witches in the UK, that comes through the story as well. Matthew and I were watching a documentary during October that had to do with the Pendle witches, and he immediately tied it into this book where Alice, one of Tom's friends, her family is from Pendle, and so he made a few connections into the documentary that we were watching. And it's just a really great adventure. Like, if you are an adult that likes middle grade stories, or if you have you know, a preteen or a teenager at home that is really into kind of, you know, those sorts of supernatural creatures and adventure and all of those kinds of things, it's a really great series. And I remember when it first came out and I binged the whole thing. So I really wanted to put that on here because it's an absolute favorite. And next up, I wanted to put on the Hex Hall series by Rachel Hawkins. So I've only read the first 2 in this series, and I would really like, I think there's 3, possibly 4 books in the series. And it's great because it's dark academia, it has witches, it has other supernatural beings, and it has to do with a boarding school. So basically, you know, supernatural creatures go to an alternative type school for supernatural beings that are, you know, around the teenage age. And the main character is part human and part witch. Her father, I believe, is a supernatural creature, but her mother is human. And she tries a spell that goes awry when she's a teenager and gets sent to this boarding school. So if you like boarding school stories, it's really great. It does have kind of a heavy romance element in it, which usually is not my jam whatsoever, but the story itself is compelling enough and the adventure itself is compelling enough that I kind of look past the whole romance aspect. But it does play a pretty good role in the story, and I found myself sort of enjoying this one from the romance angle. So if you haven't picked up the Hex Hall series by Rachel Hawkins, it's been out for quite a few years, like maybe 2015, I think the first one came out. So it's been out for quite a few years. I didn't even hear about it until I believe last year. And like I said, I've read the first 2 books and it's really good. And next up is an absolute favorite. We have Witch by Christopher Pike. And if you've been around for a while, you'll know that, number one, this is my first kind of introduction into Christopher Pike when I was a teenager, and he became my favorite author. So I always tell the story that I was at a book fair at my elementary school. I was in grade 6, I believe, and I found it on one of the booksellers' tables, and it was really funny that they had this book at an elementary school book fair because, you know, elementary students definitely shouldn't be reading it, but I read everything and anything when I was getting into that sort of age. And so I made the leap from kind of the Goosebumps right into Christopher Pike, and I read a lot of Nightmare Hall as well. So this was kind of my foray into YA horror fiction. And this is a really great story because the girl at the center of this is a natural witch. Her mother was a natural witch. And so she has healing powers. She can help people. She also has kind of psychic abilities. So she has a premonition and she tries to stop the premonition from happening. So that's basically the premise of the story. Now, if you know Christopher Pike's brand of horror, it's a little bit different than, say, an R.L. Stine or any of the normal sort of YA authors. And his horror is very realistic. It's like normal kids, normal life, all of that kind of thing. But also this is pure 90s, and so a lot of the jokes and a lot of the ideas have not aged well. And if you go into that expecting that it's going to be that, obviously because we're in a completely different time now, it is a little bit of humor for your day as well. So I'll definitely recommend this one. This one is a polarizing book. I know a lot of people who love it, and I know a lot of people who don't really like it. But for me, it's such a core memory of finding that book and loving it so much. I think the copy that I read when I was a kid actually ended up falling apart. There was pages falling out of it because I read it so much, and it's so nice to have kind of that natural witch sort of angle. Next up is another book that I read recently. This is The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook, and I gobbled this book up. I thought it was fantastic. It was one of my favorite reads of this year, and I believe it's fairly new. It might have come out last year, possibly the year before, and I'm definitely going to read more of C.J. Cook's writing. So this takes place on a Scottish island, and it's kind of secluded, and it's very foggy, and it has a lot of folklore wrapped into it. And it's about this woman who's a single mother and her 2 daughters, and they're living in a lighthouse because she gets a commission to do a painting in there, and one of her daughters goes missing. And years later, the other sister basically ends up finding her, but she's the same age that she was 20 years previously. And so it's a really great adventure story. It's kind of a mystery. It has a lot of witchcraft worked into it. It has a lot of supernatural elements worked into it. The occult is worked into it. So it has all of those boxes ticked for everything that I absolutely love. And then to top it all off, like I said, it takes place in Scotland, which is fantastic. There's a lot of folklore wrapped in from that area. And I think the cherry on top of the cake was that I read this on audio, and they had the most wonderful Scottish narrator, which just made the whole thing. And if you guys know, I had surgery recently, and one of my parts of my therapy after my surgery was starting to walk every day. And so I used to put this book on in the morning, in the dark, when it was still kind of cool and kind of creepy, and kicking my feet through the leaves and everything. And it was just fantastic. And so the whole ambiance, I think, added to my enjoyment of the book. But the writing, I loved C.J. Cook's writing. This is my first from this author. And like I said, it ticked all the boxes, from the witchcraft right through the folklore, right through other supernatural elements and the mystery and everything. I don't know if I would give it a 4.5 or even bump it up to a 5-star. You know, when I finished it, I think I gave it a 4.5 star, but it was really one of my favorite reads of this year. I think I forgot to mention too, I'm not sure if it would fall into the middle grade section of this video or into adult. It kind of, there's a lot of POVs. There's, I believe, both girls have a POV, the mother, and then there's another character. So there's 4 POVs, but this book does that really, really well. I haven't done a full review on the channel yet. It'll be coming up, but just to let you know that element. So because it has POVs from teenagers, but it also has POVs from adults, it's kind of hard to know where to put this one. And then getting into some adult witchy books. So this one I read several years ago, and we're getting into actual evil witches at this point. So this one is The Devil's Mistress by David Barclay, and this one is a vengeful witch story, and it's one of those ones that you're kind of cheering on the antagonist. And it's a short read. I think it's only a novella. I read it very, very quickly, but it's one that's stuck in my head ever since I read it. And I think I've recommended this one several times on the channel before as well. I can't remember everything from the main part of the story, but basically you have a wronged woman who's been jilted by a man, and she goes on an absolute rampage. So if you haven't heard of this one, it is a little bit more on the obscure side. I would highly recommend it. Getting into one of the classics, The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear, is definitely one of my favorites. It's a classic. It's very well known. Most people who watch this channel have probably read it, but if you haven't gotten to it yet, this one is fantastic. I only read this one, I believe, in 2022 or 2023 for the first time, and I've been wanting to do a reread. I haven't read all the witchy books that I've wanted to read in spooky season, just because my adult job started getting in the way. I was working a lot of overtime and didn't get to as many books as I wanted to. So this one has a very kind of Puritan angle, where this girl is kind of very independent in a Puritan community, and she befriends a local woman who is accused, and she's believed that she's a witch, and there's a trial. It's really heartbreaking, but it's fantastic, and has a lot of history wound into it and everything. And you know, by the end, I definitely shed a couple of tears. So if you haven't read The Witch of Blackbird Pond yet, it is an award-winning book, and again, it's one of those ones I'm not sure if it would fall into the YA or the adult sphere. Getting back into another vengeful witch story, this book is probably one of the most graphic books that I've ever read. Like, my brand of horror, it has very little to do with a lot of gore and a lot of body horror, but this one takes the cake, and that's Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. This was my first book that I read from this author, and I can't wait to read more. This is, like I said, it's another vengeful witch story, and it does take place in the UK as well. Has a lot of folklore, history, all of that sort of thing wound in, and another book that you're kind of cheering for the antagonist after you find out kind of the core of the story and why she is the way she is. And basically, so she's buried as a witch like hundreds of years previously, and then in modern times there's some teenagers who decide to basically go to desecrate her grave, and she's not very happy about it, and she takes her revenge out on these teenagers. And I think I read this book in like 2 days. It was crazy. It was probably one of the books on my list that was absolutely binge worthy. It was full of action, it was full of gore. Like I said, the body horror was there, the body count was there, and like I said, it did have that kind of, it had a witch at the center of it, obviously, but it had a lot of folklore and a lot of history and everything wound into it as well. So I would highly recommend this one, and I'm looking forward to reading more from this author as well. And of course, it wouldn't be one of my videos without recommending at least one book by Hester Fox. So Hester Fox has several witchy books, and all of her books have a lot of history wound into them as well. But this one was my first book that I read from her, and it's the one that sticks out the most for kind of witches, and that's The Witch of Willow Hall. And this takes place, I believe, kind of around the late 19th century, maybe early 20th, but around that sort of time period, Victorian times. And this family, they end up having to go live in their summer house because there's some sort of scandal, and we find out during the story what that is. There's a lot of family drama, and I'm very picky about books that have family drama. It has to be done well, and it has to be done in a way that really kind of tickles my brain, because it can be very annoying, and if it takes over the story, then I just kind of lose interest because it takes away from the central plot. But this one is great. It has kind of that natural witch sort of element in it as well. It's very kind of Victorian. There's a lot of romance element wound into it. There's a lot of the two sisters at the kind of the middle of the story absolutely hate each other, and I felt for these two. I really did, and just what they did to each other and everything, it was heart-wrenching. And I think this is probably one of my favorites from Hester Fox. I've enjoyed most of her books that I've read, but this one really sticks out in my mind. And another one that I read just this year is At the Bottom of the Garden by Camilla Bruce. I did read it as part of my book club earlier this year, and we had a discussion, which you can find on the channel, a live show discussion. And this was a really great one as well. Now, this one has to do with a woman who, her husband mysteriously died years before. People are pretty sure they know that she killed him, but you know, it's never been proven or anything. And I believe it's her nieces, their parents end up dying, and she inherits them. And it's a very series of unfortunate events. She takes over because she wants their fortune, basically. And she is a murderess. I won't get into any spoilers or anything, but that's right on the back of the book, that she definitely is a murderess. And the two young girls are they're cunning. They're very charmed, if you would say. And this story had everything. I love the mystery. I love the witchcraft. I love the supernatural elements. I love the writing style. And more than anything, I think, was the comedy. It was really written kind of as a horror comedy in a way in certain areas. It's not overbearing or anything, and it does deal with heavy subject matter, but you will definitely chuckle your way through it just with some of the one-liners. So this one was really great, and I definitely will read more by Camilla Bruce. I also have another one downloaded. It's called The Witch in the Well, I believe, which came out a few years ago, and I'm really excited to read that one. And then last but not least, I wanted to talk about Slewfoot. Of course, most everybody has read this if you're into witchcraft and you're into witchcraft kind of books. So this one I'm still working my way through. I had started it, I loved it, but I had to put it down because I was really busy with my adult job and I didn't want to ruin it. But I'm really enjoying this book. It's great, and I love the illustrations on the inside. And so this is about a woman named Abatha, and she befriends or starts communicating with Slewfoot, who basically is like a forest god, I guess you would say. And this ties together a lot of Puritanism with paganism, and you know, she starts to dabble in the healing arts and stuff like that. And it says, together they ignite a battle between pagan and Puritan, one that threatens to destroy an entire village, leaving nothing but ashes and bloodshed in its wake. And like I said, I'm really enjoying this one. So much so, like I said, that I had to put it down and I'm going to pick it up again. So in my next wrap-up video, I'll be talking more extensively about some of these other books, but this one specifically. So there you guys go. Those are just a few of the witchy books that I've read over the years that are some of my favorites. You know, I mean, obviously with me being a witch myself, it is one of my favorite subgenres of horror. And so I wanted to give a little bit of everything from middle grade right up to adult, ones that are more graphic, ones that are less graphic, ones that are more historical, and then of course some nonfiction. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Leave me a question or a comment down below because you know I love chatting with you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.